Kia ora te whānau, tēnā koutou katoa, he mihi nui, he mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora hui hui mai tātou. Ka timata I te hui nei, hei karakia mā tātou. Tuia I runga, tuia I raro, tuia I roto, tuia I waho. Tuia te here tangata, ka ronga te pō, ka ronga te ao. Uhi wero, tau mai te mauri, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora te whānau, nau mai hara mai ki te hui I tēnei pō. Lovely to see you all. Ko wai tēnei, ko te Corlett tōku ingoa, no hini waka, no Ngāti Kahanunu ki Wararapa, me rangi tānei, me Ngāti Ero oku iwi, ko kotirana ngā Island Man, ngā whenua o oku tupuna. Kia ora hui hui mai tātou. So my name is Dale. I'm the Executive Director here at Script to Screen. It's my privilege to be hosting this kōrero tonight around Story Camp. So thank you very much for joining us. We thought we'd do this as a way to just get some more information out there and to answer any questions that you've got around Story Camp, the overall kaupapa, the way in which it runs, or the application process. So I don't know if it's worth me maybe just giving a little bit of an overview first of what Story Camp is, for those of you who don't know. You can look on the website, there is a pretty detailed description of it, but I'll just give you the high level kind of overview, and then we'll just go into questions really. Let's just bring up, I'm just going to bring up the kaupapa of Story Camp so I can make sure I don't miss anything. So first off, the deadline. Always good to start with the deadline. So the deadline is September the 22nd. It's Monday. I think it's 1 p.m. And that's so we can start processing it that day and get it out to our readers the next day or the following at the latest. So that's why we tend to stick to the 1 p.m. deadline. And yeah, get in early and make sure you fill in the form. It's not a complicated form, but just get it in early. Otherwise, it can have some problems on the day if everyone comes in at the same time. But it is an email. It's via a jot form, so it's pretty simple. So the Story Camp kaupapa, most of you will know this, but it's a residential lab, so it runs from Monday to Friday. It's kind of a half day on Friday, if you like, but it's from the Monday, about 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday, all the way through to Friday. You do stay on site. And it's at a place called Ballaraka, which is out in West Auckland. And we've been there for a few years now, a couple of years now. And it's a lab primarily focused on story development. So it is really for writers, writer-directors, writer-producers, or the filmmaking team, but we're not looking at the directorial vision or the directorial voice behind it necessarily. It's really around the writer's voice and the story development process. Projects can come in at any stage. We do suggest a little bit more advanced than maybe the first draft, because you're still possibly finding the story and even finding your voice within that story. So we do suggest a little bit more advanced than that is useful. We're not prescriptive. We don't actually say you can't come in at first draft, but from our experience of seeing it over now 11, or this will be the 11th iteration, most projects that are very early probably don't get through the process or aren't successful in the application process. So I'm just trying to ward off those and say, look, it might not be at the right level. Happy to have a conversation with you about it and where it's at. For example, last year we had 2 adaptations coming from theatre into film. So they were probably very early in their scripting for their feature film, but they had a wealth of knowledge and experience of that theatre production with audiences, which actually informed their development as a feature film. So there are always, outliers in this process. It's a story-focused lab, although we do invite directors to come with their writers if they're not a writer/director, and we do invite producers to come because we know how important the team is to that story development process. The lab is very bespoke in that you have 3 or 4 core advisors that you'll have across the week. You'll have one main advisor that you'll see a few times through that week, and then you'll have other guest advisors that will be advising in different ways on your project from a story perspective. Some of those advisors will be traditional kind of script editors and people in the story space. Others might come from other art forms like poetry. They might be novelists. They might even be musicians. They might be cinematographers. They might be other artists giving you a different perspective on your work. It's not designed to derail you. It's just designed to, challenge your thinking sometimes and actually ask some key questions at key times in your development process. We don't overload you, but you do tend to get 3 or 4 of them across the week. That seems to be a good number. We also have, on top of the bespoke one-to-one sessions that you'll have throughout the week, we have, in the past, we always have a session with actors. So you'll have someone working with the actors and the material that you've got. It's not about necessarily staging the work. It's more about looking at the themes and the tone of the work through a physical process with actors in the room. And everyone finds that really, really useful. We've had group workshops before. We've had we've had panel discussions with industry leaders. And then we've had bespoke kind of guests like, Jane Campion or someone like that dropping in and doing a kind of talk around their career in a more inspirational way. So last year we had Vincent Ward do a great talk, and then we watched one of his films, which was amazing. He was also an advisor on one of the projects. So, we tie it all in. So, yeah, there's a lot of bespoke kind of support throughout the week, and then there's this kind of more group-based work as well. We also have follow-up support from Story Camp. So we do have a small amount of putia or budget allocated to Story Camp for some follow-up sessions if teams need it or want it, which can be decided on a one-to-one basis. So that's kind of the kaupapa of Story Camp. As I said, it's a residential, and the key part of the residential is shutting out the noise from the world around and getting 4 or 5 days with your team in a kind of bubble around your project. And the reason we encourage writers to come with their other team members, if they can, if they have them, is because then they can, go through the process of the Story Camp, and then out the other side, they've kind of got a common language and a common point of reference to continue that development on with the rest of the team. So that's kind of the overview of what Story Camp is. Is there anything else? I'll just check my little note to make sure I didn't forget anything. I've talked about the stage of the script. Oh yeah, the one thing that we often get asked is, what are you looking for? And I mean, the honest answer is we don't know. We just know it when we read it. And there's an industry panel that are a part of our selection process along with myself. And I would say from last year, the first year that I ran it, certainly the things that pop out are when someone's got a story they're telling that, one, they have a reason to tell it. That reason is really clear, with clearly linked to their perspective on that story, their angle on the story. And then there's something really unique about their voice. There's something really unique about who they are and the way they're telling their story and their angle on that story that seems to pop out. And you read it and then you can't stop thinking about it. That's the thing that seems to resonate for me, and certainly for the panelists that we brought on last year. And that's not to say that every great project or every unique project can get through, because there's only 8 spots. So it's a numbers game as well, unfortunately. But you've got to be in to win. So I encourage everyone to come in if you feel this is the right development process for you. But yeah, it's not easy. The odds are never good, but you've got to be in to win. So I encourage you to apply. So, okay, over to you now. That was my bit. So who would like to kick us off with the first question? Oh, here we go. Morag's got a hand up, I think.
It sounds fantastic. Does the participant have any choice in who's advising them, or you bespoke it and you tailor it to the project and the themes and what you think, or is there any input from the participant?
There is input, absolutely. So what we do is once we select the teams, we meet with you all prior to Christmas, and we have a good conversation about what you're looking for both from a project and also the way you like to work and what your values are, what's really important to you. And then even at that meeting, I'll probably have some ideas and maybe run some names past you, because I've already started thinking. As soon as we start reading, I start collecting a list of potential advisors for this year. And as I said, it's always bespoke. We have had some people that we've used for a number of years in different ways, and they're experts in this kind of work. So often they fit quite a number of different projects, but some projects really do demand a really bespoke team around them. Last year we had a musical, for example, and so I had to find not just musicians, but I had to find people that understood the adaptation process from theatre musical to film. So the lovely John Sheedy from Australia, we got hold of him and brought him in on that project, and it worked. He worked for the family films as well, because he's done a lot of kids and family films. So so part of it is me working out what's right for you, and then working out if they'd be right for other projects, because there's only so many advisors we can have. But yeah, definitely, and open to, if you've got ideas of people you'd like to work with, absolutely. Some people come in with producers who are kind of working as story editors as well, and that's fine, yeah.
Cool. Well, it sounds amazing. Brilliant. Is it unique to New Zealand? Did you create this, or is this a model that's...
No, this lab was created by Esther when she was in the role at Script to Screen, and she's done an amazing job, and it's evolved over the years. So as I said, this is the 11th iteration of it. What I would say is it is similar in some ways to other development labs around the world, and feature film development labs. It's taken some of the best elements of different labs around the world. But I would say certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been around it as a funder previously. It's become more and more uniquely of this land. And certainly the way in which tikanga Māoritanga is embedded in the kaupapa of this lab makes it very much from this country, yeah. Oh, here's another one. Oh, yep, there's Keely at the top.
Maybe this is more for you, not for the people who have applied and not got in. But what do you and your team notice about the projects that don't quite get over the line compared to the 8 or so that do?
What's common? Oh, I think there's different groupings. I think so. Some are probably quite early in their development journey, and as a result, there's not really a clear. Potentially, there's not as clear a voice or distinct kind of perspective on the story yet. It feels like the story's come out, and it's still in that very early formative time where they're trying to find, even trying to find the core narrative of the story. It feels slightly objective rather than from a perspective. I think there's some films fall into that grouping. I mean, there are films that have fallen. Well, I've only run it one round, but I've obviously funded it for many years in my role at the Film Commission. But last year there was conversations around whether projects were actually kind of ready for production, and actually this process of development might not be the best. You know, do they need it type thing? Not from a financial point of view, just it feels really, really strong and solid, and there were a few that fell into that category and didn't get through. A couple did get through, or one did get through, but that was because it was clear what their development needs were, like when we went back to the application itself. And sometimes that can be a subjective conversation that we've got to watch as panelists need to, actually, we can't make those decisions. If people think they want to do more development, then that's up to them. And I think the key thing is, I didn't see this last year, but I potentially have seen it over the years of reading different scripts, is when it feels like it's not a pastiche necessarily, but it's not really uniquely you, or uniquely your perspective on something, or your voice. And maybe there's a sense of what does the market want, or what does someone else want, rather than what I want to say, so films can fall into that space as well. I didn't see that last year, but and then unfortunately there's a group of films that should have got in, but there's only 8 spots, and so you sit there and argue with your other panelists, and you win some arguments and you lose some, and you go off and you ring the filmmakers and tell them sadly they didn't get in, but you're aware of them and you hope they come back. That's the reality. Okay, so here's one. What would you consider to be the most essential piece of the application material? Is there a piece you'd encourage us to focus on? The script, the tone, the personal connection to the material, the statement of what the project needs? Good question. All of the above. No, I would say, well, yes and no. I think that's the honest answer. I think, so what happens is we read We read it all, but in the first instance, before we get into a shortlisting, you read the first 20 or so pages of the script, and you read all the other material. And that gives you a really good understanding of the story. You know, obviously you read the synopsis, so you know the story they're telling and everything, and what they want to do with it. And then that first 20 or so pages really gives you a sense of the writing craft, of where the project's at in terms of craft, but also the writing craft of the writer themselves. And then once we make a shortlist, that's when we read the entire script. And so I would say what's really important is, because of that two-stage process, making sure that your first 20 pages is the best it can be, because it's going to put your best foot forward, but also that all of your support material really does tell us the core aspects of that film and all of the kind of the journey it's on in terms of the development needs, because we're going to read that 20 pages with that in mind. And I've always found personally, when I read, and no scripts are perfect, of course. It's really about what you want to do with the development of it, because it's the development lab, it's not a production lab. So it's very much about what you want to try and achieve out of this process. And I think that's the key thing for most people is this the right lab for it? Can we help? And do they have a sense of where they're going with it? And and then do they have the team, or if they're on their own, have they got the ability to get there? But we don't expect an end result. There's no outcome that we're expecting out of Story Camp. It'd be great if there's another draft. The majority of films, well, certainly I think it's now 50 or 60, over 50%, probably 60% of the films that have come through in 10 years have gone on and got further development finance. So that's a good testament to the process leading to something else. And as I've said in my previous comms, there's nine of the films have been made, which is great. We really want a 10th one to get to double figures, so no pressure, but one of you have got to get in and make your film.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about, obviously, it talked a lot about online about being based in Aotearoa, and you spoke a lot about the tikanga Māori as part of the process. Is the team also looking for the actual story content itself to be based in Aotearoa? Is that a focus for you guys?
That's a good question. Not particularly. We are funded by the New Zealand Film Commission, who I need to acknowledge. Thank you very much for their putia. We're very thankful for now the 11th year. So I guess as long as it fits within their criteria of a New Zealand film, then that kind of makes sense. Now, those films could be set anywhere. They can be co-productions, so they could be with co-production partners, the UK, Canada, China, India, all the other 17 or 18 countries, or they could be set on the moon. So it really is about the talent from our point of view, and if that film would likely qualify as a New Zealand film under their guidelines. I think that's probably where we need to kind of operate within. But once again, because it's a development lab, and it's about the process of that project being developed, the writers, the directors, and producers, if they're all from here, even if they're not based here, although it'd be great if they can be here for the Story Camp itself, we're able to support them through this lab. So I think there's a bit of a grey area there. Where is your film set?
Currently, it's set in England, yeah.
Well, we've got co-production agreements with that, so that's okay. Oh, here we go. Have book adaptations been used in this development camp, or are they in the wrong place yet? No, they're definitely not in the wrong place. Yes, they have been previously, and was last year. Last year was, I think they were all plays actually that were being adapted. But the year before, we had a novelist actually, first-time screenwriter, but she was adapting her own novel, and her writing partner was there with her. And previously, she had been an advisor a few years before that as a novelist who was advising on different stories. So yeah, absolutely. And adaptation is a big conversation we're having in the industry. So yeah, the more we can talk about this and the more projects that we can develop in this space, the better. So absolutely key. Would it be, Michael, would it be an adaptation of your own work or an adaptation of someone else's work? because I guess the question then is, if you don't have if you have the rights to it, that's fine. But if you don't, then you'd need to have those in place before you'd come to the camp. Yeah. Oh, cool. So you got the contract in place. Great. Okay. All good. Yes, it's always evolving. It's always an evolving thing. But yeah, we just want to make sure that you, you have the right rights in place to be able to develop it and utilize the time and the money and the resources that we're putting into it. So yeah, we can have a chat about that if you want as well. Cool. Is there a spread of genres each year? Yes, James. Yep, there tends to be. Certainly in the application pool, there's a pretty good spread. Well, there was last year, and that is part of the consideration we take when we're looking at trying to get the final 8. Is, have we got a good spread of different types of projects? It's not a major decision making because you're not working together. You might do some group work, but the bespoke one-to-one stuff is literally the project and an advisor. So, and sometimes grouping them together, i.e. if there's a genre that certain advisors are really, really experts in, then that could be quite useful. For example, as I said, last year we had theatre translations and more kind of family films. So we had a grouping in that space. So that was quite interesting to find advisors in that space. But we normally get a pretty good range. Yeah, we're getting more genre films coming through, more, I guess, traditional genre films coming through in Aotearoa in general, I would say. So that's quite interesting. Not getting as many comedies, actually, which is interesting. Maybe we're not feeling as funny at the moment, which is understandable given the state of the world. But yeah, not quite as many comedies, I would say. Okay, is it frowned upon if we don't have a producer? No, not at all. So writers can come in on their own. It is a writer's lab after all. And in fact, in previous iterations, probably 4 or 5 years ago and before, producers weren't really encouraged to come. It was very much focused on writers, but I think there was over a number of years, there was a conversation that was had around, hang on, it feels like, especially for writers that are deep diving into the story development and untethering themselves a little bit, that then the poor old producer picks them up at the end of the week and goes, oh, we're heading in this direction now. That's interesting. So then this idea of inviting producers in and to be involved in the journey was kind of taken on. But no, it's not frowned upon at all. We had 2 writers last year that were writer only. They didn't have producers, and absolutely fine. And from our manaakitanga perspective, certainly we make sure we look out for those writers and just check in on them a bit more than maybe the others, because they haven't got team members around them to be, just sounding out things and a sounding board kind of approach throughout the week, because it's really quite intense. But yeah, no, doesn't matter if you've got a team or not. What we do say is that the producers may not be in every session with you. Like, it's up to the writer, the advisor, and the producer to work out which sessions they go to. And sometimes it's better for producers to actually step out and allow those writers and those advisors to have those conversations they need to have, that aren't really affected in any way around logistics or around the feasibility of something at the moment. It's really purely just the creative conversation. And then other times, it's really appropriate that they're in the whole time. Okay, here we go. Oh, Becca's got, if you already have some ideas about what the weaknesses of your story are, would you just pitch the synopsis as it currently stands, but then outline the kind of changes you'd make in the statement about what you need from Story Camp? If I'm understanding, yes, I think that's a good idea. You'd still need to provide a script if you've got one, because we're going to need to read the script at some point. But I think what has worked quite well for people is, and we recognize that there's a time, like we're talking September and now, March is the lab. You could have a whole other draft by then, or even, 2. So we've got to kind of agree a cutoff time for the final script that you want us to assess. So we really do encourage you to try and make that your application one. If you get shortlisted, there is the potential that we could talk to you and go, actually, if you've got another version, you could give it to us now. Otherwise, it delays the whole process. So where possible, the application script should be the script that you're submitting. But absolutely, if you think there's some areas that you really want to develop, and your words, you think they're weak, that's the area of weakness, then just speak to that. And even if you've got scenes that are holding scenes within the middle of the film or the end of the film that say, more synopsis-based scenes. Here's this happens, this happens, because I haven't actually fleshed this out yet because I still need to get there. That's absolutely fine. People can read past that and go, oh yeah, I can see where you're going. As I said, the key thing is we get a sense of the craft of the writer and what the story potential is. Do assessors look for projects to fill slots? We've got family. No, not at all. No, that's definitely not what they do. They read them pretty much clean. I always encourage people to start with the script first, but I can't force that. But I tend to just want to start reading the script first and get a sense of the story as it would unfold for me as a viewer. But no, they're not looking for different types of films. They're pretty much just fighting for the ones that really pop for them and really resonate with them. And that's why we get different advisors every year. And that's why we have industry people. So we'll have 3 industry people and myself reading, and then I'll bring in other specific readers if and when I think we need them for different representational reasons. And so, yeah, what my experience is, people read and just go, these are my top ones. And they can all be quite similar, or they could be genre quite different.
Dale.
Oh, yes. Here we go. Oh, yes. Tom. Hello, Tom.
You may have already answered this, but I'm curious about those people who are part of the camp and then post the camp. Do the advisors stay engaged with them for a period of time? Is there like a facilitation process where there's regular check-ins or anything like that? Or is it kind of just, this is the week, you've got what you need, go off and write it?
No, there's check-ins from us. So we get hold of the cohort and check in how they're going. We're not asking for another version or anything like that, another draft. Often what happens then is an advisor or a participant will reach out and say, actually, I've been talking to Vincent, or I've been talking to Sophie or whoever, or Kath, and I'd love another session with them. And I can then go, yeah, we've got some budget to pay for their time to do another session or 2. And that's happened with, I think, 2 people from last year. And the year before, I think we had about 4 people ready to do that. And sometimes it's leading up to something like a development funding application to the Film Commission. So they just want maybe a bit more of support in that space. And other times it's just, I want them to read the draft that's come out of Story Camp and take it to the next step. So, yeah. So it's informal, but it's through us. So, yeah, we can help facilitate it. And actually, one person from last year was a different advisor. So it wasn't their main advisor. It was someone else that hadn't been an advisor for their project, but they got to know them over the week, and they knew about the project, and they both agreed that, it might be interesting to have their perspective in it. Okay,
cool. Amazing. Thanks.
With the submission PDF document, do you want a full pitch document, images, tonal colors, etc.? Or would the team prefer just a simple document instead? That is a good question. I like an image or 2, but that's just because I think, I'm a visually focused person. We don't need a full prop. We really don't need, it's not a production funding. So there will be more words than pictures, unfortunately, at this stage. But I think where images are useful is in that tone, in terms of just placing me in the world. Possibly even just a key image or 2 is enough sometimes. Don't think you have to do a whole pitch document at all, because that's not what it's about. But anything that helps bring the reader into your world and your emotional journey is really helpful. and this is just a personal thing. I just read a script the other day, not for this, but for something else. It was a short film, actually. This is my personal take. Not everyone has this take, but technical writing doesn't help me. So cut to, zoom in, close up, because it takes me out of my heart and into my head. So I'm thinking of the camera movement, and I'm not thinking of the character or the moment that you're taking, the journey you're taking you on. That's just a personal preference for me. But I was with Briar Gray Smith, great writer, of course. She was leading the workshop, and she took with that comment. So I thought, oh well, I'm not alone. It is just, I just noticed it with myself when I'm reading, and if it becomes technical, not so much the slow fades or those kind of things, if you need those for a bit of style, but actually any camera movements or any kind of camera direction within a script doesn't help me. It just puts me in my head, and I don't want to be in my head when I'm reading your scripts. It's not much use. Okay, Wei Ling, what is the age range of the advisors? A question for Gen Z story and or themes. Good question. Well, because it's bespoke, they can be any age or any range. If you look at our website, you can probably see the majority of them are probably, I'd hate to put an age on them, I don't know. They probably are a bit on the older side in terms of 40 plus, maybe 50 plus, some of them a bit younger. We had some younger ones last year. But once again, we're gonna find the right advisors for the project. So if Gen Z or other generations are important, then that's what we'd have to go and find the right people for. What I do find is in terms of writing craft, structure, different aspects of the writing, there are certain people that are really, really good at that. And then there are really good people who are great at the story, the theme, and the world. And they're not always the same people. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes you don't know. Like last year, we had the amazing Wellbeings over a number of projects, who's a great filmmaker in his own right and visual artist, as well as an amazing academic. But actually what I kind of knew but didn't know as well as I maybe could have is that he had a personal connection to one of the projects I put him on. He had the technical craft and the artistic craft for the project, but I didn't have as much of an insight as I maybe should have, that he actually had a lived experience of that project as well, which was huge and hugely insightful for that team. So sometimes that happen chances can happen. But the instinct was he was right for one aspect of the project, and actually it became much more influential than I'd ever expected. So yeah, hope that answers your question, Wei Ling, but we can find some Gen Zs. Have any of the realised films through this forum been sold to an international market? Yes, that one, misinformation. Nothing up there. I'm trying to, I'll have a look. I can think of 3 that have been sold. I think I can think of actually, most of them have gone to an international market, i.e. festival markets. But I can think of 3 that, at least 3 that I can think of that have sold and been released theatrically into international markets. But I will check that out.
How many applications do you receive?
Good question. So up to about 50. I think that's been the kind of 40 to 50, maybe sometimes 60. Last year we ended up, I think it was just under 50 we ended up with. There was quite a few that got in touch, and because the dates had slightly shifted, or it was quicker, the turnaround was quicker from the year before, there was quite a few projects that weren't quite ready. They didn't feel were ready. But yeah, it was a bit under 50 last year, but it's normally around the 50 to 60.
And the projects who didn't get in, and do you actually send them like a feedback or something like that? Like, hey, why they didn't get in?
We do. We let everyone know, obviously, that, yeah, if they've been successful or not. We take a note of all of the meetings we have, And we've got a high level kind of bullet points. Here's a couple of things that came out of the meeting that said the positive, this is what was working for people, and here's a couple of areas of you might want to work on. So we can fire those out, we can send those out. What I prefer is actually to have a conversation with people, because there's a lot more nuance that goes on in those conversations and the considerations that's possibly more useful for people. So what I did last year was I met with the majority of, I think probably about 30 different applicants. I think people reached out and I just kind of had meetings with them. And it was quite good for me too, because then I'm finding out more about where the projects come from, where it's at. Some people, they're dusting a project off from, a few years ago, and it felt a bit like that. It didn't feel as current or as contemporary. And other times, it's very early in their journey. So yeah, but we try and give feedback. What is hard I've found with feedback is the moment you write it down, people kind of, and I'm myself included, I include myself in this, we kind of pull apart all of those words to work out, what really happened. And you can read all sorts of things into things. And some people have said, oh, they obviously hated my project. I'm like, did you not read the feedback? The feedback's actually quite positive. So yeah, we're sensitive souls, us creatives. So, they can't avoid it. So I think it's better to have a conversation.
And also, how many times a reader, like how many readers read one script? Like one reader per script, or how many?
No, so we read them all. So basically all four of us will read all the applications. Yeah. There's the only reason that someone won't is if they have a conflict of interest. So they declare any conflicts as soon as they see the list of people and projects. There's a way in which we manage those conflicts, and they basically say, hang on, I know that person too well, or actually that project I've been involved in a previous life or whatever. And so they swap out, and often then we'll work out whether we bring someone else in to make sure it's all even the amount of readers we have, or I will become the default reader of all of those and make sure that I've been across those. And then the 3 externals are fine. But yeah, we read it all. That's why we only read the first 20, well, I say that 20 or so pages, but some scripts are great. And so you're into it and you're like, oh, I'm into 50 pages. I might as well just read the whole thing, I did that quite a bit last year, but we only really have the capacity, because we don't have a lot of money for our readers, our assessors. We only really have the capacity for them to read the shortlist. And we shortlist, well, last year, I think it was about 16, maybe we went to 18. So just, you got a 50-50 chance basically if you get shortlisted. But yeah, if we don't get 50, if you get 30, then I guess you could read them all, but 50 to 60 is quite a lot to read.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. A few people haven't. Oh, here we go. Maybe I missed this, but if you've spoken to it already, but could you speak to the day-to-day agenda? Yeah, of course. No, I didn't really go into that. So the day-to-day agenda is, it changes across the week, but basically, in short, the one-to-one sessions from memory are an hour and a half, 2 hours. Apart from the acting one, which sometimes is a double, so it becomes a 3-hour session, depending on how we're doing it, because sometimes that needs a little bit more time. So generally, an hour and a half, 2-hour session with an advisor, and you'll have. I'm imagining the grid I had to create last year. I think you'll have 4 of those across a day, 3 or 4, depending if we do a group exercise at some point in the day. So the first day we start with mihi whakatoa, welcome, and an opening circle, which is really around just meeting each other and finding out more about you and your projects. So we do a bit of a sharing in that space around the projects themselves. And then in the evening, last year, 3 or 4 teams had their first one-to-ones, and the other teams kind of had an evening off, if you like. And then the next day, by the lunch of the next day, everyone's had their first one-to-ones with their main advisor. And then you carry on that process throughout the week. So you have these 1.5 hour, 2 hour sessions, story sessions with different advisors. And then peppered within that, we have these group exercises or group workshops. So last year we did an amazing one with our kai tautoko tikanga Māori support person, Anahira Gildea. So she did a session on the connection between the whenua and story. And it was really, really fascinating for people to, you know, it was a 2-hour session on that in the middle of the Wednesday or something. And then they go back into the one-to-ones, carry on with that. The evening, we might do a screening of a film. We did a talk, as I said, with Vincent Ward about Vigil and his career, really. And then we watched Vigil, which is amazing. And then the following night, we did a talk around adaptation from theatre to film. And we had Grace Smith, we had Philippa Campbell, and we had John Sheedy, who was one of our advisors who had done that work as well. He'd come from theatre. So we do these group things, we do these one-to-ones. You'll have, as I said, 3 or 4 advisors across the week. Last year, some projects had 5 or 6 advisors because they really want some bespoke kind of support in different areas. And then we have a wrap-up on the final day, final morning. And because everyone's staying on site, it does allow for evening kind of, you know, we obviously all eat together. We all kind of spend time together. And the location itself has some great breakout spaces. It's in the middle of the woods. People can go for a nice walk in the morning and you know, in the evening and stuff like that. So it's a really amazing environment to do that. But that's pretty much it. So you've got the advisor sessions throughout the 4 days, and then these group sessions that you can join in on. Some people, because of what they need or whatever, may say, actually, I just want to dial off a bit tonight. I'm not going to sit in and do the panel, you know, sit in on that panel discussion. I need to actually decompress and get into a quiet space, and that's absolutely fine as well. So yeah, we make it work. We really encourage people to stay on site if they can, because it does build a really great incubation, you know, space for everyone. But also recognize, you know, last year we had, you know, we had someone who had a young child and basically said, look, I need to go home each night. I was like, well, okay, we'll make that work. So we did. And someone's reached out actually this year about that as well. So, and on that, you know, we're going to, if people do have childcare or other access requirement needs, then just let us know, and we can work out how we can help, you know, financially as well as in terms of the scheduling.
Sorry, can I follow on from that? So is it more brainstorming and talking about character, story, structure and everything? It doesn't sound like there's that much time for actual writing. So you're not going to see an assessor, or sorry, an advisor the next day and you've gone away at night and done some writing, you show them or something like.
Some advisors are like that, are task-based and go, okay, here's an exercise and we're going to do a writing exercise. And others are more, I guess, a questioning-based advisor. So basically asking a key amount of questions or a key question, and that just unlocks all sorts of things, and it becomes a conversation. And it also depends on your style as well. Some writers don't like writing in that kind of environment. It's actually not about the writing. It's actually about the story development and the possibilities of things, and then they go away. And others certainly every night are sitting there at their laptop going, hang on, I got to get all this in. I got to get this in. So it really is up to you and your advisors, and working out as well how the advisor works best and you work best as well. That's why the matching is so important. And I'm around the whole time. So we have conversations all the time around how's it going? You know, is there anything we can tweak, you know, for the final session? Your lead advisor, if you like, you'll see at the beginning and at the end of the week. I'm looking at whether or not we put another one in the middle. It's just not enough time in 4 days. That's 4 or 5 days. I need to increase the day. But yeah, so some people have said that to us on reflection on the feedback, that it might be good to go deeper with one person for longer. So yeah, we'll look at whether that's a possibility.
Cool, thanks.
Make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I've got one here. Okay, so what's the cost? Well, there's a admin cost to apply, which is $30, I think. That's it. It doesn't cost you anything if you're selected. It's all paid for. So it's paid for by the Film Commission, which is lovely. So yes, we will, if you're out of Auckland, we'll fund your travel to Auckland. And the cost of staying at the camp is all paid for. You get great catering. We've got a great caterer, a local caterer that comes around. She's amazing. Mary, she's amazing. It's all covered. So that's the lovely thing about the Film Commission. It's nice. You have your own room, you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you don't need to worry about that. You're not staying in tents. But some people stay a little bit off-site, like some producers, for example. We've put a group of producers in one of the houses, and they're just down the road, and then we just ferry them back and forth and stuff like that, because there's not quite enough room for everyone if we have the full 8 teams, and you know there's a writer or writer/director, producer or 2 or something. So we have to put people elsewhere. But yeah, most people stay on site, and we stay on site as well. So 2 of us from Script to Screen stay on site, and then we've got a number of volunteers that come in each day. Oh, here we go. How much do you consider the writer's past achievements credits when selecting projects? No, not having. Well, definitely not. The last bit, would not having made a feature before limit your chances? No, doesn't come into that at all. Truthfully, I don't think we really do consider it that much. I guess in the final mix, when I think about the final decision making of that final 8 films, or 8 teams, if you like, it comes into it then in the sense that I guess we're looking at where's the project at, where's the likelihood of it being made at some point. How realistic is it, given the film, given the scale of the film, given the aspirations of the film? How likely is it to get made with those people attached? So that's when it possibly comes into being relevant. So yeah, so I think that's where it comes in, but it doesn't rule you out if you've got no credits at all, because ultimately it's about the script development. And so if there's a great story there and it's a unique voice and perspective, then I suspect you're gonna have a fighting chance to get through. But because it's a development lab, honestly, it's about the possibility of that project and the perspective and unique voice of the project first and foremost. So, and it certainly doesn't stop you if you haven't made a feature film. That's irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant, because often people haven't made a feature film before when they're coming in. But be aware that you are in, I mean, this is why it is competitive. You are in the mix with people who have written feature films before and are at their 4th or 5th draft of their this feature film. So it is competitive in that space, like you are competing against, people who are out there doing it. So, but once again, got to be in to win.
Have you chosen the date in March yet?
Yes, we have. Yes, I think it might be on the website now. Yeah, so it's the 16th, Monday the 16th to the 20th of March.
Okay.
2 reasons. One, last year it was, I think, either the end of Feb or the beginning of March. I can't quite remember, but it was roughly a week or 2 before. It's a little bit tight, the turnaround from, because as we know, New Zealand is a nightmare on Christmas, New Year. It's all until the middle of February. It's kind of asleep. So even just having conversations with advisors and things, I can have some before Christmas, but and I can lock in some certain people, of course. But it's really New Year kind of focus to try and lock people in once they know their diaries. So we just pushed it out a little bit. And the second thing is, if we are bringing in Australians, which we often do, I was looking at what else is happening around the country at that time, and Māori Land is happening the following week in March. So I thought, actually, that might be interesting to bring advisors over from Australia, and then they could stay on for Māori Land if they wanted to. So I was just trying to tie it in with that. So last year, just so you know, we had an Australian team in there. So we actually had 9 teams in the mix, and that Australian team was sponsored by Vic Screen in Melbourne, the state agency there. The idea behind that is to bring Australians in and create some collaboration within the lab itself, so we can creatively connect with Australian talent, but also to get state agencies to be aware of this lab and the projects that are in it, because a number of your projects might be looking for, I don't know, co-production finance out of Australia. And state agencies in Australia, we don't have the equivalent here. We've just got our, obviously our federal government one, which is the Film Commission, which operates kind of as a state and a nation, I guess. And so, yeah, seems to work last year. So they're not taking a New Zealand team away, like a place away. It's always added. But yeah, it worked really well last year. Anything else? Any other questions? So timeline, we obviously with deadline September, then I can't remember, it's probably a month of reading I think we allow for the first read, and so what's that, October we would kind of be shortlisting, and then it's from October to, we try and get it done before Christmas, the selection process, so then we can have a meeting with you all that's been selected kind of the second, I think it's first or second week of December, just so I can get a really good sense of the type of advisors you need, and feedback my thoughts, because I will have read it twice by then anyway. So I'll be having some ideas about some advisors we've used before, or different people I know. And then, and that's a good time, you know, we had it last year. I'm sure there was a couple of projects that just said, oh, actually, you know, we've worked with that person before and they're really good, but, you know, I feel like we've got to the end of the road on that, on that angle. So maybe we want to go in a different direction. So it's really good to have that one-to-one time. And then, as I said, we will come back in March. Anyone that wants to come in this year that wants to have a specific conversation about something you're maybe worried about or you're not quite sure about, then happy to just drop us an email, and we'll organise a time to meet. There's no props. Great, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate you joining the Hui and being interested in Story Camp. If there are other things that Script to Screen are doing that you're really interested in, then obviously get in touch. We've got a couple of other programs that are live at the moment. One, we've got a new program for script development for deaf, disabled, and neurodiverse creatives that we've just advertised recently. We're just raising a little bit more money for that and planning, but we'll roll that out soon. And yeah, hopefully in the next few weeks we'll find out what other programs have been funded, and we can let you know. But we look forward to seeing your applications come in Story Camp. So thank you very much. Great to see you all. Nice to see some smiling faces. And have a great week. Ka kite.